Hi, I'm black. Now, before you swipe away, let's have a conversation. I'm not going to rob you. I just want to have a conversation about identity in America, because identity in America matters a whole lot. It seems to matter for everybody except for black Americans. Now, we got to break this stuff down, right? If you're from Guatemala and you happen to be in America, and I assume you're a Mexican, I think you're going to take offense to that. If you're a Mexican American and I walk up to you and I'll call you like a Puerto Rican or something, I think you'll take offense to that, because your identity matters, especially from these other nations, right? And now if you're an African and you're in America and you're from Ghana, from Nigeria, Zimbabwe, any one of these places, if you just come to America and be like, oh, I'm black, that tramples my identity. Say, why does that trample my identity? Because I'm a descendant of a freed slave. My great-great-grandfather was a freed slave. And so everyone that I know in my family, we are born in America, came from America, we can't go nowhere else. Being a black American is a very unique identity. No one else can understand what that means, because every immigrant who came to America, you made the decision to come to America. I didn't say, hey, slave traders, hey, it's a black guy over here, come pick me up and take me to America. I'm trying to catch that boat. That's not our reality. And so for every group of people, when you come to America, I want every black immigrant, every dark-skinned immigrant to know there's no such thing as a black immigrant. You have to understand whiteness and blackness. Whiteness and blackness are both, they're based on proximity, they're not based on identity. Every nation in the world, every group of people, they're dark-skinned people, they probably have a negative name for those dark-skinned people. And so in America, they called us black because the rest of the people were white. It's just in proximity. But if you come to America and you come from Ghana, hey, you're not black. You're Ghanaian. If you come from the Bahamas, you're not black. You're Bahamian. And now you might say, I'm a Bahamian American, which would be absolutely accurate because you still identify with your nation of origin. Now, hypothetically, if you were to forfeit all of your beliefs and customs and values and say you want to assimilate into blackness, then maybe you could be like a Paul Wall or something like that. But I don't even think Paul Wall renounces his whiteness. He just really doubles down on the culture in which he grew up in. Now me, as a black American, I doubled down on the culture in which I was inherited in. Some people look at me and say, you must be like Indian or something like that. Let's specifically talk about Indian Americans, Native Americans. I don't think it's possible for you to be a Native American, because before this place was ever called America, your people called it something. So what did your ancestors call this place? Call it by its name. They say her name. What was America's name before it was America? And then we can have that conversation. But for me, ever since I got here in chains and bondage, this has been my home sweet home now. I was here when it first began. Me, the black American descendant of slaves. Yeah, me personally. I am the lineage of my grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. And so I think it's important for you to represent your group of people. That's what America is. Everyone can say, I love America. I love America. But what does that mean, and how is that reflected in our politics and in our communities, right? You hear every immigrant say that America is the land of the immigrant. Yeah, y'all came from overseas. Most of you, y'all chose to come from overseas. And now when you choose to come to America, it's not cheap. It's not cheap to travel. If you want to ride, if you rode a ship or took a plane to get to America, you had to pay some money. And so that tells me automatically that your whole situation is different than my situation. Hey, raise your hand, black Americans. How many black Americans have enough money to get a passport and buy a ticket and move your entire life to another nation? Who can do that, right? Just being able to go through the process of transitioning from your native land to my homeland, it was a whole political, expensive journey. And now in America, right, because you got to defend black Americans so much. This is why it matters so much. My home, my land, I didn't run away. Black folks couldn't run. I couldn't just get on no ship and just take off and say, well, you know what? America enslaved me. They had Jim Crow laws. They incarcerated me. They created crack laws. And so I'm gonna run to Russia. Hey, Russia, please accept me. I'm a refugee of America. Nah, hell no. because the Black American, the descendant of a slave, the whole world knows who I am. When I show up, I don't speak no other tongue. I speak my native language. What's my native language? English, baby. The King's English, to be more specific. It's very interesting. I grew up in a Mexican neighborhood. First generation Mexican neighborhood. I saw what the investment was like into these people who didn't speak the language. You know what they had? ESL. Have you ever heard of ESL? ESL is English as a second language. And so for the immigrant that comes to America, we create an entire education system to facilitate your learning. But when it comes to Black Americans, you say, hey nigga, just figure it out. And that offends me. That offends me greatly. And so when I started this off and I said, hi, I'm Black, my friend asked the question, my business partner asked the question. He said, why does America hate the Black person so much? This identity has been so ingrained in us by the media. You know, Italians, you get mob bosses and stuff like this. Even Russians, y'all get mob bosses. But when you show the impoverished Black man being powerful and creating a gangsterment organization to protect his community, all of a sudden you want to lambaste him and call him a gangster and put him in prison. You didn't create prison laws for mobsters. You didn't create prison laws for the early bootleggers. You didn't do that because those people had the ability to assimilate into whiteness. You have to have an other in your group. You have to say, those people are the reason why we have so many homicides, why we have so much incarceration, why we have so many drugs, why we have so many out of wedlock babies. You have to blame somebody for that. But when we're only 13% of the total population and the vast majority of out of wedlock births, all this degenerate behavior, white people do it more than the Black American person. It's a fact. Mexican people, y'all do it as much or even as Black folks. But for some reason, the Black American, we take so much of that brunt. Now everyone's like, man, why are we still talking about Black? Man, because Blacks ain't been repaid for the mistreatment that this America has bestowed upon us. And I think that's the most important question that we can have for this election. Where am I going? Kamala Harris thought it was important to say that she was Black. Why? Because she wanted to identify with me. She wanted to identify with the original American. She wanted us to say that you're like us, but you're not like us, Kamala, because you're not the descendant of an American slave. I respect the work that you came from, and you can have whatever connection to Jamaica or India, but you don't have a connection to me. And so with all this identity conversation, I think it's important for Black people, Black Americans, to finally stand up and acknowledge, yeah. My grandmother was raped, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother. It's a possibility that they were taken advantage of by this great nation. And I understand this. And that pain and that struggle and that hurt, it's ingrained in me. It's a part of my story. It's a part of the American story. That's why identity matters so much. You can't just call me no woman. I mean, I guess in the world that we live in right now, you can. And if you were to choose to call me a woman and you wanted me to play your game, bet that. I'll play your game with you, cool. If I'm a woman, now I'm a lesbian, and when I meet other beautiful lesbians, I'm gonna pull out my wang tang and slide it in her hoo-hoo dilly, and we're gonna make some babies. Because if y'all wanna play crazy, y'all can play crazy. But I'm not gonna play crazy. I'm gonna tell the truth based on my physical reality. And my physical reality is, I'm a Black man in America. And since you don't wanna understand my plight, I have to continue to double down and fight for who I am until you accept me, recognize me, and repay me for the damages that you caused to my community, to descendants of American slaves. Hi, I'm Black, and identity matters in America. These identities come together, and it's an amalgamation which makes you the greatest American alive.